Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Precious Styling. If you're a new subscriber, you're welcome to the family, and if you're a returning subscriber, I love you. On this channel, I share sewing tutorials, pattern drafting, DIYs, and fashion related content. In today's video, I'll be giving a detailed tutorial on how to draft the basic bodice block, or rather a full body pattern. Now, the basic bodice block is the primary blueprint for garment construction. As a beginner who wants to get a good foundation in pattern drafting, you need to understand the basic bodice block, as this will help you modify whatever pattern you have into any complicated style you want to create. Now, I'm going to make this pattern very straightforward, detailed, and easy to understand, and this pattern will be used in so many tutorials that will be coming up on this channel. And without delay, let's get started. Now, before you begin drafting your basic bodice, I assume you should have taken your body measurements. If you don't know how to take accurate body measurements, I have left a link in the description box where you can check how to do that. That aside, you would understand that your circumferential body measurement is divided into four, like one half of your front body, the other half of your front body, one half of your back, and the other half of your back, which is 4. So now whatever measurement you've taken of your body circumference would be divided into 4. Now we'll begin to draft our basic bodice pattern, and I have rolled a line at the top of my pattern paper, which would be the starting line where all our vertical measurements would start from. I initially intended to make a basic bodice pattern for the upper part of the body, but changed my mind halfway and decided to go lower up to the knee. So placing my tape at the starting line, which I assume to be my shoulder, leaving my tape at the shoulder line, I would go down and mark my shoulder to my chest, which is at 9 inches. I would also go down and mark my shoulder to my bust at 11 inches. From there, you would go down, mark your shoulder to your under bust, which is at 14 inches. Then I went down to mark my shoulder to waist at 16 inches. Please note, due to the bust contour, the shoulder to waist at the front is usually higher than the shoulder to waist at the back. The shoulder to waist at my front is 16 inches, while the shoulder to waist at my back is 14 inches. I also went down to mark my shoulder to my hip at 25 inches. And finally, my shoulder to my knee line at 41 inches, which is also going to be my hemline, and that falls at the end of my pattern paper. Now I would repeat similar measurements at the other side of my pattern paper so I can connect both points by ruling a line. So this right here is my chest line, this is my bust line, this is my under bust line, this is my waist line, this is my hip line, and this here is my knee line or hemline, as the case may be. Note, this is the front part of the pattern, and we're assuming that our pattern is on fold. So we'd go ahead and create our neckline, and the neckline is just a basic one. It's 3 inches wide and 3 inches deep. Now you're going to connect both points either using freehand or with your curve. So I have a curve and I'm just going to connect both points together. Now is the time to take our shoulder span. My shoulder span is 14 inches. 14 inches divided by 2 is 7 inches. You would agree with me that your shoulders aren't usually straight. It has some sort of slope, going on there. So now you're going to account for that slope by going down from that point where marked by 1 inch. This is to create the slope I am talking about. Now, to know your armhole depth, you may want to place your tape at the top of your shoulder and pass it around the arm, just like the picture above. You can also divide your shoulder span into 2, but that may not be always accurate. Or if you're not so sure of that, you can use a simple calculation. That is, divide your bust circumference by 6 and add 1.5. For example, if your bust circumference is 39 inches. You divide it into 6, that would give you 6.5, and if you add 1.5, that gives you 8 inches. So that is my armhole depth. So from that slope, now from that point we marked, which is going to be the slope, I'm going to come down by that 8 inches that we calculated as our armhole depth, and that falls at the chest line. So from that point to my chest line is going to be my armhole depth. So I'm going to connect a line straight down to the chest line. Now we're going to take our darts. Now darts are very important to your pattern. You take darts to shape up an outfit, snatch the waistline, or define whatever part you're trying to work on. We're going to start by taking our bust span measurements divided by 2. My bust span measurement is 9 inches. 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. So I mark that there, and I'm going to mark that on the bust line and on the waistline. And you're going to connect both points on a straight line with a ruler. So we're going to take our darts now. You can choose to go by 0.5 inch on both sides of your dart line. However, waist and bust ratio differ. So according to my waist and bust ratio, I would prefer to go by 0.75 inch on both sides. However, if you are on the bustier side, you can choose to go by 1 inch on both sides. And just because I don't want the darts to be too pointy when we're joining it, I went down from the bust line by 1 inch on the dart line. And I would connect both points outside the dart line to the point I marked. And because we're drafting a full body block, I'm going to extend the dart line towards the hip. So I'm just going to go down by 5 inches from the waistline towards the hip line. And I would also connect both dart legs to that point. Now that we've done that, we're going to create our armhole. So we're going to divide your bust circumference into 4, and I'm going to mark that on the chest line. As it is, you're going to mark the midpoint from the slope to the chest line, and from the point you marked, you're going to go in by 0.5 inch. From the slope, you would connect a line to the point you went in by, and from that line, you would connect a curve to the point we marked on the chest line. As it is, we'll begin to impute our circumferential body measurements, and we'll start with the bust circumference. My bust circumference divided by 4. It's already indicated there. And as someone who gives adequate allowance to my patterns, I'll add 2 inches allowance. You can add less if you want to. Would proceed to the waistline and would divide our waist circumference into 4. I have that there, but we are going to replace the darts we took earlier. The darts add up to 1.5 inches. So we're going to replace that and we're going to add 2 inches allowance just as we did earlier. Same thing applies to the hip line. We divide our hip circumference divided by 4. We mark that there and we add 2 inches allowance to that. And from the hip line, I went up by 1 inch and went down by 1 inch. Now I just choose to do this personally to create a smooth transition from the waist to the hip. You can directly connect the waistline to the hip line. I just choose to do this way in order to give the hip a very, very smooth transition from the waist. So I proceed to connect all the points we've marked and just decided to make my lines more visible. At the knee line, which also doubles as my hemline, I'm going to divide my hip circumference by 4 and minus 1 inch from that. For example, if my hip circumference is 40 divided by 4 will give 10 inches. And if I minus 1, that would give me 9 inches. If you want yours to be quite taper, you can take out 2 inches or 1.5 as the case may be. And we're going to add 2 inches allowance to that, making 11 inches. So I'm just going to connect everything to that point and rule a line. Now we're going to account for the unequal length of the front and back waist. Okay, the front and back is usually not the same length because of the bust, like I said earlier. So for me, the difference between my shoulder to waist at the front and shoulder to waist at the back is 2 inches. So we're going to give this a bust that, okay, if you're busty, yours might even be up to 3 inches. If you're not so busty, it may just be 1 inch. So now I'm going down from the bust line by 2 inches, and I'm going to connect from that 2 inches I marked down to the dart line. And at the end of the day, we'll be closing this dart up either by stitching it or by manipulating the pattern. As a result of the shortage that may occur when we are trying to close up this dart, I just went out from the side of the dart by 2 inches, and I'm just going to connect both of the sides to the darts like a triangle. And by the time we're done closing up the darts, the front and the back's length will be equal. And we're done drafting the front pattern. Let's head over to the back. For the back, I have ruled out our starting line, which also serves as the shoulder line. So placing the tape at the shoulder line, we're going to mark our vertical measurements, and we'll start from our shoulder to chest line at 9 inches. Then we'll go down to the shoulder to bust point at 11 inches. We'll go down and mark the shoulder to waist at the back at 14 inches. You will notice I skipped the underbust. You can go ahead and mark your underbust line. I didn't just deem it necessary at this point since we're dealing with the back. The distance from my waist to my hip is 9 inches, so I'm going to go down by 9 inches and mark that. And from the hip line of 23 inches at the back, I will go down by 16 inches to mark the hem line at 39 inches. And I'll rule lines. So this right here is my chest line. This right here is my bust point. This right here is my waistline. This right here is my hip line. And this right here is my hemline. You will notice that I didn't mark the underbust line for the back, and this is because I didn't really see the need for it since we're working at the back. However, because this is a tutorial, I just decided to mark my underbust line at the back at 12 inches. So this right here is my underbust line. In most cases, the back usually has a zipper, so I'm leaving out an allowance of 1.5 inch for the zipper, and I'll roll a line all the way down. As it is, all measurements henceforth will be taken from this line. We begin by taking our neck width. Neck width at the back is 3 inches, and I'll also take the shoulder span at 7 inches. Now the neck depth at the back is 1 inch. I'll take my curve and connect the neckline. And like we did at the front by taking our shoulder slope, we're going to come down by 1 inch and connect that to the neckline. Our armhole depth remains 8 inches just like the front, and we're going to connect that to the chest line. We're also going to mark our bust span measurement, which remains 4.5 just like the front on the chest line, bust line and waistline. At the waistline, we're going to come out on both sides of the dart line by 0.5 inch. And from the chest line, we're going to come down from the imaginary dart line by 1 inch, and we're going to connect that to each point beside the dart line. Pardon me, I just realized I haven't rolled out the nipple to nipple line. And we're going to extend the nipple to nipple line downwards by 6 inches, and would connect both dart legs to the base of this line. Now is the time to create our armhole. So we're going to take our bust circumference divided by 4 and mark that on the chest line. Unlike the front pattern where we went in by 0.5 inch on the armhole line, we wouldn't be going in by 0.5 inch on the back pattern. As it is, we're going to connect the armhole from the shoulder slope up to the point we marked on the chest line. Since that point already represents our bust circumference divided by 4, we're going to add 2 inches allowance to that. Now we're going to move to the waistline, divide our waist circumference by 4. We're going to replace the 1 inch that we already took on the waistline and we're going to add 2 inches allowance to that. We would also proceed to the hip line, divide our hip circumference by 4 and also add 2 inches to that. And from the point we marked, I would go up by 1 inch and go down by 1 inch because I want to create a smooth transition from the waist towards the hip. And I would connect all the points together. And I just want to make these lines visible. At the hemline, we're going to take our hip circumference divided by 4, would minus 1 inch from that, and would add our 2 inches allowance. Then would proceed to connect that to the hip line, and would cut everything out. And with this, we've drafted our basic bodice, or rather full body block, and you can modify this pattern into any other pattern you want to recreate. In the next video, I'll be giving a detailed tutorial on how to manipulate your darts in order to create a seemingly dartless pattern without visible stitches. And if this video was helpful, do drop a like, subscribe if you haven't, feel free to ask questions and share, and I'll see you in the next one.